we go. Ring the bell. TS taking stock. I'm guessing another New York Stock Exchange company going public. That's what they usually do when they're on that balcony at Broad and Wall, New York Stock Exchange, folks. Interesting day, very quiet in the markets because all eyes were on D.C. This was the day people were waiting to see what was going to go on with the big meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky and President Trump and the other 7 or 8 world leaders, global leaders at the White House today. A lot of traders on the side. Also, there's a big event happening Friday. Expect Friday to be a big monster move for the markets. You may see quiet markets jockeying back and forth between up and down for the week, but Friday will be the big kahuna when Jerome Powell makes some comments from a summit out west, and that will tell you the direction of interest rates likely going forward. That will dictate where prices are going. Right now, Dow Jones down a little bit, couple 30 points or so. S&P almost flat, look like less than $0.50 difference. NASDAQ up 5 a touch. A couple of the other markets we've been watching, importantly, oil. Oil's up a little bit more. Again, another 50 cents a barrel, up to 63.5. I want to get down under 60. Get down under 60. Get gasoline under $2.50 a gallon nationally. Will be much stronger as an economy. Gold playing around the 3375, 3380 level. Still very strong. And crypto, boy, that was really strange. So Friday, crypto got a little bit weaker. Over the weekend, it was kind of holding its own around 118, 117,000. I watched it this morning, early this morning, like 4 in the morning. Bitcoin dropped to 114, almost 113,000. And then for whatever reason, kind of recovered a bit to 116, maybe even pushing 117,000. You're looking at Ethereum right there. Ethereum at 43.59 as we speak right now. Solana, 163. XRP, guys, held its own. 308, held its own. Big sigh of relief in the control room. All right. President has been busy in Washington, D.C. today hosting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and other European leaders. So let's get right to our Chief White House correspondent, Mr. Brian Glenn, for what happened today. And Brian, congratulations. We got a couple of questions in there. We had a lot of fun. I'll tell you what, before we get into it, this is a great, I love this interchange between, what's going on? Our own Brian Glenn having an interchange with a world leader, Zelensky, and President Trump. This is wild, folks. Watch.
Yeah. I've got a question for each of you. First of all, Mr. President Zelensky, you look fabulous in that suit.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, you look good.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, looks good.
I said the one that attacked you last time. See, that was I remember that.
Yeah, I apologize to you. You look wonderful. No, my first question for you, President Zelensky.
In the same suit. You see, I changed you out.
Maybe you're.
We got a little bromance going on there with the president of Ukraine, Brian. Good comeback.
Yeah.
Good comeback.
Yeah, I'll give him some credit. He came up with a good one, and I think it was a very lighthearted exchange, very different, Eric, than the first meeting that Zelensky had in the White House. But yes, I had to go ahead and compliment the president, Zelensky, on his attire, and of course he had some fun poking with me. Which, by the way, for the record, this is not the same suit I was wearing. I have multiple blue-toned suits, but it was a great joke. And I've had a lot of media here pull me aside and say, is that the same suit? Is he right? I said, look, are you mad? What's your comment? I said, man, we're having some fun. I'm just glad he's in there negotiating for peace, really, with the president. And I think today was a very different Zelensky than we saw back in February.
That was a class act by you not calling out Zelensky for saying, oh, no, it's a different suit. And Trump loved it. You saw Trump very happy. But let's talk a little about that. So the demeanor, obviously, in that moment right there was positive. They're laughing, a little jocular, hitting each other on the back a little bit. Kind of felt the way Putin and Trump were kind of smacking each other on the shoulder and the back on Friday as well in Alaska. Then they went to the multilateral meeting with all the European leaders at the table. It seemed, I don't know, it just seems like we're going to get something there. But again, when you get down to it, Brian, Putin still wants that portion of Ukraine, the Crimea plus the other portion of Ukraine. Yeah. And Zelensky said, we're not going to give it up at any cost. Is there a deal to be had, you think?
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't know. They're in still the East Room right now meeting, and then they were going to join again in the Oval Office, and Trump was going to make that call to President Putin and maybe come up with some type of solution. But to your point, I don't know where we go from here. But it was a very unified table, though. Matter of fact, one of the people there even said it's Europe, it's all of Europe and the U.S. coming together for the same cause. We all want peace, and of course, I think that is the ultimate goal. But we are missing one person in here that ultimately can veto all of this, and that is Putin. But we'll see how that phone call goes a little bit later. But my biggest takeaway, Eric, from the Oval Office is that it was a very different situation. If you remember last time, you had Vice President J.D. Vance jumping in there and saying, "If I can, Mr. President, for just a second," and calling Zelensky out for kind of grandstanding in front of the media, and that really sent the meeting south. Well, I think it went south a lot earlier than that. But different tone today, and a very different Zelensky today that we saw. And I think President Trump was in an excellent mood. I mean, he's got a lot on his plate right now. Think about all the stuff domestically that's going on. And then at the same time, he's trying to solve a major war between two countries. So I think it was a very polished President Trump, a very polished and disciplined Zelensky, which led to the tone today, which hopefully they'll conclude here shortly. And we'll have some type of next step, which could be as soon as Friday.
Yeah, right.
I've been told,
right.
if everything goes as planned. Yeah.
By the end of the week, White House keeps telling us if there's something to talk about with Putin and Zelensky together trilaterally, it could happen as soon as this week. About a minute or so, Brian. Question is, there are two sides to the debate of why the European Union basically came along. On one side, they say, well, Zelensky brought him along for support in case he got attacked by Trump. And the other side says, it shows that Trump has been working with the Europeans to bring Zelensky to the table, maybe to get not just a ceasefire, but actually a peace agreement. What do you think? What was the impetus for the Europeans to be there?
I think it's the second reason. I don't think Trump needs anybody he could take them all down by himself. He doesn't. Zelensky might need some help, but I think it's the other. I think it shows that President Trump has the ability to reach out to all these world leaders, get them here on such a short notice, and let's come up with a plan. So I don't think they were there to basically back up Zelensky, because if that's the case, then Trump can take on all the world leaders at once. That's how powerful that man is. But I do think it's kind of a flex to say, look, we're going to get this deal done. I'm going to reach out and have all these several world leaders, 6 of them, and we're going to come to the table. And we're going to get it done. I just think the next step is getting Putin at that table. And President Trump even said to President Zelensky, "Hey, if you need me to come, I will come and support you on that." And I think that it will happen. I do think Trump will be a part of that last negotiation for sure.
Great. All right, Brian, really good to have you. If something happens in the next, 52 minutes or so, you jump back and let us know. Appreciate your time. Great reporting, Brian, as always.
Yeah, will do.
All right, folks, let's go to the executive director for the Foundation for Freedom Online. And he's here to discuss what happened at the Trump-Putin meeting in Alaska and also why Zelensky is in Washington today. Again, let's have Mike Benz weigh in on why the European leaders. So Trump goes to meet Putin in Alaska bilaterally, but this is a multilateral meeting here in D.C. with Zelensky. Who are they backing? Mike, whose side are the European, Keir Starmer, Macron, and Maloney? What are they there for?
Well, they're there for the European donor set, the hedge funds, the private equity funds, the alternative asset managers, who all have billions of dollars of investments in Ukraine and Eurasia. They are very squarely on Team Zelensky here, and have been since well before the 2022 affair popped off. The issue that Trump is running into is that Ukraine is losing on the battlefield, and there's no real way to stop the bleeding in terms of land loss other than peace. But they don't want peace on Putin's terms. They don't want to have to concede land in the Donbass. They don't want to have to concede Crimea. Really, this is all downstream of the unfortunate decision of the Obama administration to overthrow Ukraine's democratically elected government in 2014. And this is now 11 years into this. But what did the foreign policy establishment expect? When you topple a government in a coup and then half of the country does not want to respect the new coup government, you either have to rule by totalitarian force and bloodshed, which is what was done between 2014 and 2022. Ukraine's military killed about 35,000 people in eastern Ukraine with U.S. weapons and Canadian and UK special forces on the ground. And Russia stepped in, and they've now declared some of this land theirs, including especially Crimea. But Europe wants to stop Trump from agreeing to a peace deal that includes giving up that land. And Trump is in a very difficult place because what can he really offer Putin? All he can really offer is his word that the U.S. will not back Ukraine being folded into NATO, that the U.S. will not breach the terms of the ceasefire. But what good is that really worth when behind Trump
Mike,
is an
let me
American
ask
foreign
this,
policy
and this is
establishment?
important. There's a really important discussion I want to have with you. We're going to hold you over for the break for the second block, and very extremely important. We heard it from Witkoff over the weekend on the Sunday shows. I want to ask you about it. But do you get the sense, Trump 1.0, Trump in 2016 to 2020, he couldn't stand NATO. He didn't like anything about him. They didn't like him. And now this is a different Trump-NATO relationship. Are we at risk? And I say at risk because I hate this idea. Are we at risk of becoming a little too close bed partners with NATO again in the U.S.? And God forbid, maybe even talking about Ukraine entering into NATO?
Well, Trump has a very strange relationship with NATO in both now and in the first term. While you're correct that Trump sort of campaigned on flirting with fundamentally renegotiating or even leaving parts of the NATO relationship, even during Trump 1, he was campaigning on getting more money to NATO. He was campaigning on getting all the countries to fulfill their 2% GDP commitments, and so even though he was sort of campaigning on it and tried to pressure NATO to reduce its jurisdictional mandate, he was still pumping it up financially. And you see that same sort of continuation in the relationship today, where he's still calling, it appears publicly, there's always a little bit of 4D chess to what Trump is doing, but publicly it does appear that he is sort of reining in NATO maximalism vis-a-vis Ukraine, which I think is part of why he had a one-off separate discussion with Putin. But at the same time, he's pressuring NATO member countries to pay more and more to NATO. So it's sort of arming a beast and putting it on steroids while telling it to stay in the house. Yeah. So it's a very strange relationship.
Yeah, Mike. I want to hold you over because there's a very important question. Steve Witkoff was on with Margaret Brennan on CBS, on the Sunday show CBS, and he said that the U.S. has offered Article 5-like security protections for Ukraine. Really caught my ear when I heard that, and let's talk about the implications of that when we come right back in 2.5 minutes.